So welcome again, and this is still KASNEB CPA Foundation Level CS CCP. It's an August 2022 paper, Introduction to Law and Governance, and we'll be tackling question 5. So in relation to professional ethics, discuss five ways in which enforcement of professional ethics and standards is conducted in your country. In relation to professional ethics, discuss 5 ways in which enforcement of professional ethics and standards is conducted in your country. So, professional ethics. So, we'll start with the normal things that are done in organizations to basically try and create awareness of what is supposed to be done, the standards and the ethics that have been established. These are basically the do's, the don'ts, the right from the wrong, differentiating the right from the wrong and encouraging people to do the right and what is good to the organization or to the state. So we will be looking at the 5 ways in which enforcement of those professional ethics is conducted. Number 1, a code of conduct. And this is where normally we talk of the handouts that have all the set rules and regulations on what is supposed to be done, what is not supposed to be done, how you're supposed to handle yourself. Those ones are normally indicated on the handouts, and sometimes we also put them in open places like the bullets, those bulletins, where anybody can have access to them. We talk of the company websites, and this is just to create awareness. Company websites. We talk of the newsletters. When we are printing the newsletters for the for the companies, we can have them. The bulletin boards that I just mentioned, bulletin boards. These are some of the places where we can basically use to create awareness and from that now enforcement is possible. But these can also come in here in this question when we talk about ways in which enforcement of professional ethics and standard is conducted. Number 1 is through awareness. We create awareness, and awareness can be created in any of these ways. Then we also talk of now the disciplinary measures, and the disciplinary measures could range from basically these are the sanctions we put in place to discourage people or to deter people from doing unethical or involving themselves in unethical activities or standards that are not good professionally. So disciplinary measures might range from suspension, and this suspension, to expulsion. Can also lead to civil suits. These are different ways of enforcing. These are just to make sure people live within their professional ethics and conduct. Civil suits, and you can also talk about the criminal, criminal charges, where you raise the criminal charges against the people who are involved in committing or doing this unprofessional or unbecoming kind of behavior. We also talk of dismissals, and possibly suspension, and we can also talk about what this warning letters. Warning letters, they are also ways of enforcing, and dismissals come in hand. We also talk about the punishments, and rewards. Punishment and reward. Reward, people who live within the professional ethics and standards, you reward them. Those who fail to live within the standards, you punish them. And again, the punishments may range from even transferring them to other places, or demoting them in terms of the ladder, that hierarchical ladder structure. You can demote them, or you can, there are so many things, ways of going about this. Then we can also talk of effective communication as one of the ways of enforcing, reminding people, communicating why they need to know the reason why it's very important to live within the professional ethics and standard. That's also part of enforcing, to ensure that people basically do their part. And we can also talk about putting the internal controls, especially in place, especially when we talk about whistleblowing policies. These are so that anybody can report anytime and present data, or rather they present information which can be used to pursue any case. So that means that everybody will be keen, because everybody is watching everybody. And anytime you watch or you see somebody doing something that is unethical or professionally unbecoming, you report through the channels which have been put in place, and you will not be known that you have reported. That is very important. Now, the question is a bit general, and I'm answering it generally. If you can, I think if you've seen how I'm going, it's a bit general. That in relation to professional ethics, discuss 5 ways in which enforcement of professional ethics and standards is conducted in your country. Of course, for profession, there must be a code of conduct. There must be, this is communication, company website, newsletters, bulletin. This is communication to create awareness. So communication, there was communication here. This one might come and join this. Then disciplinary measures, we've seen. Then dismissals, and this one also includes the withdrawal from membership, from being where they take back you cease to be a professional. If you're talking about a professional group, withdrawal from membership, and that is it's major, because that means that you cannot claim again the title that comes with being a member of a certain professional group. So it's quite major. It's a setback. So it's a way of enforcing. So when people hear of these things, they can be suspended, they can be expelled, they can have legal suits, and legal suits where the damages possibly will be an issue here. Criminal, we are talking about fines, we are talking about penalties, we are talking about jail terms. All these are ways of enforcing. When people hear of all these things, they basically put them in the right track, that let me do the right thing so that I don't end up in any of this. I think this, you should be able to get any 5 points here, and then that will take you through. So awareness, code of conduct, awareness, disciplinary measures, punishments and rewards, and then whistleblowing policies, dismissals, and the withdrawal from membership. You can get 5 points, which will give you the 10 marks that you so badly desire. Let's look at part B. State 3 conditions which must be satisfied for a commercial agency to arise. A commercial agency, normally, this one, we talk of a relationship like we have manufacturing, and then manufacturing firm, and then we have another firm here now that trades on its behalf to the third parties. This is a commercial agency. So this one basically connects the manufacturing firm and the third parties. But of course, he works under the instructions of the principal for that particular area, that the scope that they entered into a contract with. So what are these 3 conditions which must be satisfied for a commercial agency to arise? Number 1, for these conditions, parties must mutually agree. Parties must mutually agree to enter into this agency. They must mutually agree to enter into that agency. Though there might be exceptions, especially when you talk about necessity. No, there is agency by necessity. But otherwise, it's a condition that the parties must mutually agree to enter into that contract. Then the parties must also be must have the capacity to enter into the contract, and then the contract itself must be legal. So it must be legal, they must have the intention to enter into a contract, and the capacity. They must have the capacity to enter into that particular commercial agency contract. Otherwise, if they don't have a capacity to enter into those contracts, that is the end of it. If the contract, the platform or the basis against which the contract is entered into is illegal, then we cannot have that commercial agency contract rising. And also, they must have the intention, or they must mutually agree to enter into that particular contract. Other than that, we have other just minor, and that the agent must actually agree to work as an intermediary. The agent must agree to work as an intermediary of the principal. Must agree to work as an intermediary of the principal. This one goes without saying. He must agree to work as an intermediary of the principal. And so, if he agrees to work under the instructions of the, if he's an intermediary of the principal, it means he works under the instructions of the principal, and so the principal will determine the pricing, or such like stuff. So it's the principal that determines, because the agent is supposed to work under the instructions of the principal. Again, when we talk about commercial agency, there must be that kind of some permanency into that agreement. But these three will give you the most the best answers that the examiner wants to have. State three conditions which must be satisfied for commercial agency to arise. It must be based on legal. It must be legal. Whatever the object matter must be legal. The parties must have the capacity, contractual capacity, and the parties must also mutually agree to enter into the contract. Then, of course, you can add that the agency must be ready to work as an intermediary between the principal and the third party, and should work under the instruction of the principal. So thank you. That should be able to satisfy the examiner. Let's move to item C. Explain 4 ways in which the independence of judiciary could be achieved. 4 ways in which the independence of the judiciary could be achieved. Now, number 1, being enshrined in the Constitution. Enshrined in the Constitution. Very important that it should be clearly stated, and they should be given the necessary powers by the Constitution, so that they should get their powers right from the Constitution. That way the independence will be achieved. Number 2 is that they should be provided with the resources that they require, adequate resources actually that they require by the state, without necessarily them begging. So they should be provided with adequate resources that they require by the state, and this should just be automatic. it should be captured in the budget without really their, it should not be an influence of one person, that if they possibly, the allegiance to that one person, then they get enough resources. No, it should be captured in the constitution, and the relevant state officials should just make sure, or institutions should make sure, that the judiciary gets adequate resources. Once it gets the adequate resources without any, like appearing like they have gotten some help from somebody, then that way their independence will be assured. So the system should work to ensure that the judiciary have adequate resources which will help them basically ensure that there is a certain level of independence. Then they should be guarded by the state. They should be guarded by the state itself, guarded by and from the influence of the state, and this to a large extent of the state, and this to a large extent again finds its way back here, where it should be enshrined in the constitution that the judiciary should actually be independent from any other parties. Then by coming up with judgments impartially, so they should exercise their judgments without any form of bias, The moment they start bringing in bias, then their independence will be the independence will be affected. So there should be no any form of bias. All their judgments must be impartial, and everybody should be subjected to the same judicial process. Everybody should be subjected to the same laid down judicial processes and procedures. So there should be it should not be such that there are certain people who are supposed to be, the laid down procedure should apply on everybody equally and fairly. And this is a ground for ensuring independence in judgments. It's a ground for ensuring independence in judgment. So explain 4 ways in which the independence of the judiciary could be achieved. Number 1, being enshrined in the constitution that they are to be independent. Number 2, they should be provided resources that they require by the state, and it should be automatic. The institution should work towards ensuring that the resources are actually provided in time. Then they should be guarded by and from the influence of the state, and that should also be captured in the constitution. And then the judgments should be impartial. The moment they cease to be impartial, they'll be interfering with their independence. They should be partial. So all the judgment, they should be impartial, that is, pass judgments without any form of bias. Then everybody should be subjected to the same laws and procedures that have been laid down by the country. So we talk of, again, fair judicial proceedings. There should be fair judicial proceedings, and the court itself should respect all the rights and freedoms of all persons. Rights and freedoms of all persons. When it respects the rights and freedoms of all persons, then it means the independence aspect of it will just come automatic, because it respects the right and freedom of all persons. So nobody will have an upper hand to the other person, and that is very important. Then again, to ensure independence of the judiciary, the jurisdiction, they should have jurisdiction. The judiciary should have jurisdiction. jurisdiction over all issues of judicial nature. Over all issues of judicial nature. All issues of judicial nature. Yes, that is very important. Not that some issues are going to be discussed in other sectors or other arms. So the judiciary should have complete, jurisdiction, all the powers when it comes to the judicial issues, and that ensures independence in their dispensation of their duty. And again, the judgments that these people pass, the judgments passed should not be subject to review by any other, should not be subject to review by other bodies, other bodies which are not judiciary related, by other bodies. Because if the moment we allow other bodies to start pecking and interfering with the decisions that have been made by the judiciary, then we'll be infiltrating into their independence. So that is not also allowed. Now, how many points are these? 4 ways in which the independence of the judiciary could be achieved. I think this should be more than enough. That the judgment passed should not be subject to review by other bodies. The moment it's subject to review by other external bodies, then we might be interfering with the independence of the judges. And they should have jurisdiction over all issues of judicial nature. So I think these points are quite enough. Just pick any 4 and we'll be good to go. Thank you. Let's meet in the next question.